Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Schroeder. I'm with my former AAU coach, Chris Alesi, now the head coach at Manhattanville. Uh, Correct me, coach. Are you going to your fourth season at Manhattanville or is it fifth?
Yep. So it's year five, season four.
Awesome.
The
Awesome.
last time we did this, I think it was during COVID, and I was coming off year one, and there was so much uncertainty. But yeah, kind of hard to believe it's been four years, three seasons. You've kind of come and gone through the college ranks yourself, and here we are today.
Absolutely. It's just for some background for everybody, just to know a little bit about. So, like I said, head coach of Manhattanville, coached me with the New York Wrens. He also coached the U17s for New York Wrens, coached Shore Shots, coached New Heights, assistant coach at Zavarian, but also he played at Queens College and at Baruch. So, a lot of basketball knowledge to be taken from this guy. Is definitely one of my favorite coaches I've ever had. So, like I said, really glad to have you on, coach. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate it, Mike.
Absolutely. Let's get into the first question. Now, this is a question I've always wanted to ask you, but haven't had really a chance to. But what has it been like to be the guy now recruiting players, going from an AAU coach where you were trying to get players recruited? That must be an interesting kind of transition.
It's different. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I spent 8 years of my professional life, really almost my whole 30s, as an AAU coach, full time. I was fortunate enough, with New Heights and with the Wrens, that was my 9 to 5 job. So I got to do a lot of different things in basketball. But at that level, New Heights, the Wrens, it having played in a program like that. You're dealing with mostly Division I guys, mostly high major guys, where you know you're taking calls year round about recruiting, and at that level, you've got to get the best players. And I think the way it's kind of evolved today with the NIL and the COVID years, teams are older, and recruiting has changed so much. But for me, I think it's a lot different because at Manhattanville, we're not necessarily looking for like the best guys. We're looking for the best fits at Manhattanville. And for me, it kind of took, I think, a year or two to figure out exactly how I wanted to play, and how I wanted to structure my program. I was pretty fortunate when I got the job, pretty late in August, going into the 2019 season. The team was already set. Like, the recruiting class was in. There were a bunch of older guys on the roster. So I inherited a really good team and a really good freshman class. But I think, to answer your question, it's changed a lot because the days are different from a recruiting standpoint. You kind of knew when I was with New Heights, you knew in advance what your schedule was going to be like in terms of the Under Armour Association, and then with the Wrens with EYBL and Peach Jam, you kind of knew where you were going to be with recruiting for a small Division III school in Westchester County. Just an example, this past season, I think we had a game on a Tuesday night. I drove up to Syracuse on a Wednesday morning. And then I don't even remember where, but stopped somewhere else on the way back just to go watch two recruits. But for me, like, recruiting is recruiting at any level. That's what I enjoyed so much about my time in the AAU world. I think it gets a really bad rap. But I think at the highest levels, it's a 12-month job. You're almost, I don't want to say you're like a GM, but you're kind of living that lifestyle where you're recruiting your team, and it's roster management. Player development is huge. And then, April, May, June, July, you get to go out there and play. I think it's changed a lot, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think recruiting is the same, but different at any level.
Yeah, I mean, I could say as a college athlete, it changed a whole lot for me once NIL was introduced, because even for Division III guys, there's like players I know on different teams who are getting that experience. So definitely understand that. I want to follow up. I mean, I wanted to say first, congrats on an incredible season for you guys, right? 21-8. got to the Skyline Championship, the Skyline tournament. Talk a little bit about the success. When you're 54-30 so far in your career, I know you're not going to probably give all the credit to yourself, knowing you, but talk a little bit about just kind of what has allowed you guys so far to be successful, and how do you continue that going forward in a very difficult Skyline conference. I mean, we played Yeshiva this year. Great programs in that conference.
Yeah, the Skyline every year since I've been at Manhattanville has just gotten better and better. The beginning of my tenure coincided with, with the big run that Yeshiva had. I think they won something like 46 games in a row. We played them twice during that COVID year. It was the only 2 games we played, believe it or not, was that year was against Yeshiva. And I think for us that really helped my program, because in a time where, like Amherst and I think most of the NESCAC was shut down, at Manhattanville, we were practicing, 4 or 5 times a week, and had that opportunity to compete a little bit with Yeshiva. Lost both games by 20. But I think for us, it really propelled us into the next 2 years where, last season, 2 years ago rather, get to the conference final, lose to Yeshiva there, and then this year following it up with, another run to the final, beat Yeshiva in the conference semis, at home, and then lose a really tough game to Farmingdale State, who eventually, a week later, had the national champion Christopher Newport. I think they were up 11 in the second half. So I think we're on the right track. I think in year 1, 16 wins, year 2, 17 wins, year 3, 21 wins. I think we're on the right track, but a wise man once told me, when you think you're on the right track, if you just stand still, you're going to get run over. So just constantly trying to get better and, continue recruiting. I think this next year is going to be really interesting for Division III programs across the country. There's a slight little rule change where you get eight non-traditional days. So I think for us, we'll have the opportunity to to start working out a little bit once we get back to campus in late August, early September. With the goal of trying to get over that hump, trying to win that Skyline championship.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what got you into coaching. I never really asked you this, because obviously for a lot of people, it's very different. You look like your dad was obviously a fantastic coach at Xaveri, and your brother has done a very good job at Baruch. Played against him, obviously, my sophomore year.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about just what got you into not just coaching in Manhattanville, but coaching down the ranks. I mean, just because, for everyone, I feel like it's a little different.
I mean, obviously my dad had a lot to do with it, growing up in my household, 6, 7, 8 years old. I think most kids are playing with GI Joes, where me and my brother were playing with a clipboard. I wasn't certain, when I got to college, like what path I wanted to take. I really wanted to be a New York City firefighter. Like that was always a dream of mine, as a young teenager. Then I got to college and, obviously loved playing, and was playing at a pretty high level. 2 years at Queens College, 2 at Baruch. But during that time, started working a lot of camps and, coaching some Xaverian summer league teams. And, for me, like my first year out of college, Xaverian was coming off a city championship in 2005. And I had the opportunity my first year out of college to be the head coach of a freshman team and an assistant for my dad. And, from there, it just kind of, just kept picking up and picking up. Ultimately, it led me to 2011, I think it was, where I left Xaverian. I don't know that a lot of people know this about me. I took the director of basketball operations job at Wagner College, with a pretty, I think a pretty successful coach there at the time, by the name of Danny Hurley. He hired me, and ironically enough, I only lasted about 3 weeks there in the operations role. And from there, I transitioned into the AAU world. And then from there, it just kind of took off, like I said, 8 years at a pretty good level. And always wanted to be a college head coach though. That was always something like once I started, coaching freshmen, helping my dad at Severian, I always felt like being a head coach in college would be something I would love to do.
Talk a little about if your coaching style has changed. I remember when you coached me, it was all about, holding yourself accountable, but also you were really big into skill development. I remember those practices at Baruch and, Terminal 23, where we would just be doing all these different skill-based drills. I mean, I remember that stuff. I'm saying, so at Manhattanville, I mean, obviously, things are going to change based on how your teams are, but has your coaching style changed at all? I mean, have you had to evolve your coaching style based on your situations, or do you generally go in with kind of the same ways you kind of want to approach, coaching?
I mean, I think I've calmed down a little bit as I've gotten a little bit older. I remember like coaching your team, being out there in Peach Jam, playing against RJ Barrett, and just feeling like a pressure to win. And, I think sometimes that leads to, some emotions. And, I think as I've gotten a little bit older, I've done a pretty good job of being a little bit more measured, a little bit more selective with, how you yell at guys, how you coach guys. But the way I was taught, the way I was raised from a very, very, very young age is skill development is the lifeblood of any team and any program. So yeah, that hasn't changed at all. I think if anything else, it's probably, it's become even more important to me. I think ultimately, what I love the most at the Division III level is you really get to work with guys every day and, take a kid who comes in as a freshman and, is physically not ready. And, you can really build them up and turn them into really good players. So for me, I would say what's changed is probably my temperament, my demeanor. But yeah, not too much.
No, no, I'm glad to hear you're still honing on skill development. That's something I really enjoyed. I know when I played for you. Another big thing I think that I got the pleasure actually of doing similar stuff that you do. I actually helped coach summer league a little bit this summer at my high school. And I try to really make a point of building relationships with players. I thought that was a really big thing. Talk about that from a coaching standpoint, how important that is, because again, you and I have had a relationship, like we've known each other for about 5 years now. So, or even more than that, 6 or 7. So to talk about how you have embraced that kind of portion of it and how important that's been for you as a head coach.
I think your relationship with your players is the most important thing. If your players know that you care about them and you care about them on the court, you care about them off the court, you care about their families and stuff they've got going on in the classroom, stuff they've got going on at home. I think they're going to give you everything they have and then some. So I think the best thing about sports is the ability to build relationships and it's for me it's at the very, very top of my list of like priorities every day is check in with guys, see how they're doing in class, see how they're doing on campus. Because ultimately we only get, as we only get about 4 or 5 months together. The rest of the year, those other 7 months are, pretty long and, you spend a lot of time apart, but, just constantly checking in with guys and, keeping up to speed. I think building relationships and ultimately maintaining relationships is one of the most important thing any coach can do.
Absolutely. And talk a little bit about, because the one thing I know in college that gets, really emphasized is the importance of film and
Yeah.
watching film and analyzing film. I know that was a big jump from, because in high school we watched a little bit of film, but you go to college, it's like constant. You're always watching film. Talk about, was that at all like an adjustment for you going into it, or even an adjustment? How important do you think film is for building a good program and helping players improve their games?
I mean, it was a huge adjustment for me. Like I knew what synergy was, but I didn't know a whole lot about the ins and outs of synergy, all the things you're capable of doing there on a day-to-day basis. And I still don't. Fortunately for me, I've had some really good assistant coaches that are, really, really tech savvy and proficient with it. They teach me stuff every day, but I don't think you can be good in college without utilizing synergy and utilizing film breakdown every day, 12 months out of the year. Like earlier today, just kind of going through, honestly, just going through my teams, my roster on Synergy, and just pulling up different clips of like Tommy Latito's ball screen shooting, or Ryan Giordano's post touches. With technology advancing the way it's advanced, that there is just so much information out there, and so much stuff that we have access to. Um, Again, I think it's been a couple of years since I've done this with you, and kind of the way your podcast has evolved a little bit, and following you. I mean, you're doing a ton of film breakdown stuff now, and um, with Synergy, with Twitter, there's a million, coaching resources out there. I don't think you can have much success without the software, that's in addition to the ability to just turn on the TV and, have access to 15 games, every night. I mean, tonight there's, I think, 9 o'clock. A Savarian legend, Levance Fields, is going to be playing on ESPN for the Pittsburgh TBT team. So, I'll probably spend a couple hours breaking that one down.
Yeah, I remember what really got me into it was Synergy, because when you go through Synergy, it shows you like your efficiencies per possession. So you think you're doing a good job, and it shows you that you're shooting 35% from post ups. That might not be an efficient shot. And I mean, that probably helped you a lot too, like figuring out where guys were successful and how to work with them. Correct?
It does. I mean, I'm a big baseball fan, so I talk to my dad a lot about analytics. And I think there's like two factions of society, where some people swear by analytics, and then I think there's like the old guard that thinks analytics are overrated and not really necessary. I think from a baseball standpoint, I'm a Yankee fan. I think the best baseball teams have the ability to utilize analytics and utilize information and utilize data, but also, have the feel, and, have kind of like the old school approach to coaching or managing, and, fuse the two together. So for me, it's, I can't, nobody should ignore numbers and statistics. But at the same time, I think us as coaches, we see a lot of different things every day in practice. And, I think having the information is key, but like utilizing it and applying it ultimately, that's the hard part.
No, absolutely. I guess it's such a big part of the game now. It's interesting, but talking a little bit outside of coaching, right? How does it feel seeing the success of certain players you coach, like to name some, obviously Malik and Hassan Martin, Matt Zona, Ty Jerome, Paul Jorgensen, like those type of guys.
Mike Shredder.
Yeah. I'm not gonna name myself, yeah. But I was saying, what has had meant to you to see the success of guys you've coached, not just from a basketball standpoint, because some of those guys obviously have went on to have really incredible careers, like Ty Jerome's in the NBA, obviously,
Yeah.
right, making an impact. But talking about just like generally seeing players that you've coached have some sort of success after you're done coaching them, what does that mean to you?
I love it. I think for me, like I said earlier, it's the best part of coaching, right? Like building genuine, long-standing, meaningful relationships with people, with young people. Ultimately, that's why you should coach. And again, I've been so fortunate, so blessed to coach some really, really good players that have gone on to, play at some really good colleges. And, like you said, Ty's in the NBA, and Hassan Martin playing in the Euro League. Paul Jorgensen's had a really good overseas career. It's great. Glenn Sanabria, another kid playing in Puerto Rico, doing really well. I will mention you've got one of the best basketball podcasts out there. It's great. For me, it's like when you meet guys and they're 14, 15 years old, and, you're coaching them, you're traveling with them, you're spending a lot of time with them. As the years go by, I'm getting older and older, but, to see guys that I've been able to coach and, be a very, very small part of their journey, have some success, it means a ton.
Let's talk a little bit about what has been like the most proud moment of your basketball career so far? That's a loaded question, I know, but love to hear your answer on it.
It's an easy answer for me. 2016 New York City Catholic League city championship, Savarian High School 59, Bishop Loughlin 56. That was, my dad's last year as a coach. Going into that season, him and I both knew that was going to be the last year. And we were a very average team that year that just kind of caught lightning in a bottle late in the season, and went on an improbable run to win the, New York City Catholic League championship. For me, that's been my proudest moment as a coach by far.
Last thing, what's been your biggest inspiration throughout your entire, like, it could be coaching, just generally? Who's been that for you? Who has been your biggest inspiration? I think I know the answer, but I just want to hear it anyway.
I mean, my dad. I think my dad is, he's molded me into the, the person I am. He had a great career as a coach, as a person. My mom, my brother, who's, talk to him every day. He's kind of living the same life that I am. My fiance Dina, she's, become like Manhattanville's biggest fan over the past couple of years.
I love that.
Yeah, but I would say mostly for me, my biggest inspirations are my family, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I want to first say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's good catching up with you. I know it's been a couple of years, but definitely had a big impact on me when I played AU. I mean, not just from a basketball standpoint, but just being able to develop a good work ethic. So I appreciate that, and definitely wish you the best success going forward. So
you
thank
played
you so
on
much for being on.
You played on a great team that year. I think we had like 14, 15 guys out there in Peach Jam. We got to the Elite Eight. I remember losing to RJ Barrett in the quarterfinals. But most of the guys on that team have had a lot of success, including yourself. So anytime you want to have me back on, Mike, I would love to do it. This is always a blast for me.
Absolutely. No, we'll definitely do it. But thank you so much for the viewers. Shreds Takes. This is the head coach of Manhattanville College, Chris Alesi. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Take care, Mike.